Hello and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to talk about just how much of a disaster FTX was. So if you aren't aware of anything, FTX was one of the world's largest cryptocurrency exchanges, and they very recently went bankrupt and have fallen apart. Complete disaster. In this video I'm going to talk about how bad their internal controls were. So if you're not aware, internal controls are essentially the controls that are within the company, so internal, and they make sure that the company runs smoothly. So for example, if a check needs to be signed by two people who are independent from each other, that would be an example of an internal control. So there are several from FTX that were just complete bombs. They didn't do anything. They're just so bad. And as an auditor, this is the worst I've ever heard of. And I thought they were kind of funny because of how bad they were. And it's really shocking that we didn't hear about anything sooner. I mean, the fact that they were a trusted company is just crazy. So first off is how they dealt with kind of expenses for their employees. So I'm sure at work, if you ever have an expense and you work for a decent sized company, you probably have to take a picture of the receipt and then you turn it in, and then certain people who are independent of you will look at the receipt. They'll look at the reasoning, make sure you have approval, and then they will approve it. And then there's a decent chance that someone else higher up will approve it as well, and then they'll give the money to you. How FTX did it is a bit different. You would essentially just send a text to a group of supervisors, not specific people, just kind of random, just a group of managers. And then they would kind of send you a personalized emoji back, kind of like a thumbs up. So they wouldn't send you an official form. There's no evidence that it was reviewed by multiple people, or even that the people who reviewed it were independent from the person who entered the expense. Essentially, it was just a mess. It seemed like you could have just put in an expense report for anything. You'll get a thumbs up emoji back, and then you'll get the money. The next control that was another big mistake was with their record keeping. So typically a accounting firm, or really just any business, likes to keep records for several years, just so they can go back, they can look at why they made the decision, what decision they made, make sure there's no fraud, just so it all checks out. And then also when they get audited, they can just show the previous stuff to the auditors. The auditors will look at it. They'll be like, yeah, that makes sense. FTX didn't do that either. So what they did was they used a software that deletes messages, probably Teams, my guess, because Teams deletes messages after a few days. And they'd send it over through the text, and that's how they would do their communication for major bank decisions. Let's say, I don't know, if a business approval, potentially a new hire, anything really. And then after they communicate through Teams, then they just move on and it gets deleted with no documentation. So if you look back to the previous one, with the expenses, most of those expense requests probably got deleted just after a few days. So it would have been very easy just to use email. Just use email, it doesn't get deleted. However, no, they just didn't. And then the third internal control that I thought was just a disaster was how they dealt with cash. Their cash management, just a mess. Just bad. They didn't know how much cash they had. So as a company, you would think how much cash you have is one of the most important things you would like to keep track of. However, FTX, laziness, just didn't care. I don't know. Maybe they intentionally wanted fraud. But they just didn't keep track of the cash they had, and just as bad, they also didn't know what bank accounts they had. They didn't have an accurate list of bank accounts. Can you imagine if you didn't know what bank accounts you had? You're like, oh yeah, there's money out there somewhere. I don't know what bank it's at. I don't know what the account is. I don't know how to get to it. It's somewhere. How is this a company that had over $30 billion? It's the worst ran company I've ever heard of. There are small donut shops in the middle of nowhere that have better controls than FTX. And on the same board, they also didn't know what employees they had. So they did not have a complete list of employees. So FTX, as a lot of other companies do, they used contractors from the outside who would just come in for one specific job and leave. They were a contractor, they weren't an employee. However, as of today, they don't actually know who their employees are or were. They never had an official list of employees. There's a chance that if you worked 2 years ago, you got fired, they might still have you on a list as an employee. So even after filing for bankruptcy and in the middle of all this, they still don't know who their employees were. So that means someone who wasn't even an employee might be able to ask for an expense and get it. And then it will be deleted in 2 days, and they won't even know the cash is gone. And then, I know all those were bad, but the worst one by far is they had terrible related party loans controls. Or essentially, they just didn't do much with it. So if you aren't aware, a related party loan is when someone within the company, such as the CEO, takes out a loan from the company itself. And typically, people just avoid it because it's a mess. It's kind of risky because it could lead to fraud. And really, you have to prove that it is within the best interest of the business. You have to have the proper interest rates, the proper terms, everything, so that the business really benefits from it and not the person taking out the loan. However, they didn't do this. So the CEO took out a $1 billion personal loan, not having collateral or anything like that. He took out $1 billion from the company, and I have no faith that it had the proper interest rate, the proper terms. I have no faith that it actually benefited the company at all, and it's just crazy. Like, not even $1 million, not even $500 million. He took out a $1 billion loan from his own company. If he really needed the money so bad, why doesn't he take out a $1 billion loan from a different bank, a different cryptocurrency exchange? Just someone else. Just don't take it from your own people. And there's proof that they're so corrupt and so much fraud because there's also evidence that higher up people within the company use company money to buy real estate and to buy houses throughout the US and in other countries. So they didn't pay for it themselves, they just used company money and then they put their name on it. So this is really just rich people stealing from the company. If a normal person or a poor person did something like this, they'd probably go to jail. However, someone who's high up can get away with it seems, I guess, at least for now. But I just don't understand how you can use company money to buy a house, put your name on the title, and then just move on. That's literally stealing. But the biggest problem I have with this is the fact that their auditors did not say anything about it. They didn't catch anything, and they clearly were aware of what was going on. When they were auditing, in my opinion, I think they clearly knew something was up. They knew the company was not tip-top shape, and I think these auditing companies might never recover. So the two firms that did their audits over the past 2 years was Armino LLP and Prager and Metis LLP, and I wouldn't trust them. I don't trust anyone that they audit. I don't trust that their financials are accurate because they just after this whole disaster, this is like Enron. This is terrible. So I think these firms will go under, and if I worked at one of them, I would quickly move on to a new firm because as an auditor, everyone has to trust you, and how can you trust them? So anyways, now it's time for the joke of the day. Joke of the day, joke of the day, boop, boop, joke of the day. How do you know when an accountant is having a midlife crisis? He gets a faster calculator. That didn't go well. Oh well. So thanks for watching my video. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment about the business, about whatever. Just, yeah, leave a comment. Thanks.